Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into something pretty fascinating today. The psychology of winning.
Oh, yeah. This should be good.
We'll be exploring some key ideas from The Winner Effect. It's a book by Ian Robertson.
Okay.
I've got a feeling this is going to resonate with a lot of you out there.
Yes, sir.
Especially if you're, maybe facing a tough challenge at work.
Right.
Or even just curious about what makes successful people tick.
Absolutely. I think what really grabs you about this topic is that it makes you rethink some of those basic assumptions we have about what it takes to win.
It's true. Are winners born or are they made? That whole nature versus nurture thing.
Right.
The book kicks off with this really interesting story about Pablo Picasso.
Oh, yeah.
The son of, the Picasso.
Of course.
The guy grows up surrounded by art, success, the whole 9 yards.
Wow.
But he really struggles to find his own artistic voice.
It's a pretty powerful example of how even with, what seems like every advantage, your individual psychology can still play a huge role.
Absolutely.
Robertson digs into this idea that Paulo might have been wrestling with, what he calls the curse of genetic fatalism.
Okay, curse of genetic fatalism. That sounds kind of heavy.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
Basically, it's this belief that your abilities are already set, predetermined by your genes. Mm-hmm. So in Paulo's case, you can kind of imagine that growing up in the shadow of, studies of a famous father.
Right.
Might have made him think he could never really measure up.
Yeah, I see that.
No matter how hard he tried, he was always going to be less than.
Yeah.
And that belief, super limiting. Leads to self-doubt, lack of motivation, the whole thing.
So instead of being inspired by his father's success, it kind of had the opposite effect.
Exactly. Almost like he felt trapped by it.
Makes sense.
And the book gives another example of this curse. This time, it's a guy named Tony.
Oh, okay.
Really high IQ.
Oh, wow.
But he was convinced that his intelligence meant he didn't need to put in the effort.
So he thought he could just coast on natural talent.
Yeah, but it totally backfired. Led to disappointment, underachievement, the whole deal.
Oof. He basically set himself up for failure.
Exactly. It shows you the danger of mixing up potential with actual achievement.
I feel like we see that all the time, right? People with so much talent.
Oh, yeah.
But they never really reach their full potential because they lack that
grit?
Yeah, grit, that perseverance that you really need to succeed.
It's not enough to just have the talent. You got to have that inner drive, too.
Totally. So natural talent isn't the whole story. We need that internal motivation as well.
Right. The book really hammers home the importance of intrinsic motivation.
Okay.
That inner fire that pushes you to achieve just for the pure joy of it.
I love that.
And this ties back to some really cool research on Japanese students.
Oh, tell me about this.
So they performed way better on a task when they thought it was an IQ test.
Yeah.
Appealing to their intrinsic motivation. But when they were promised money for doing well, their performance actually dropped.
Oh, wow. So they relied on external motivation and it backfired.
Yeah, it's like the nature of the reward that really makes the difference.
It is fascinating, isn't it? Because in both cases, there's a potential reward, but it's like the type of reward that matters.
Totally. Suggests that tapping into that internal drive is way more powerful than relying on external motivators.
I can see that. Okay, so we've established winning isn't just about genetics.
Right.
So where does this winner effect thing come into play?
Well, the book explores how winning itself can give you a leg up, so to speak.
Okay.
Both physically and psychologically. It sets you up for even more success.
So winning breeds more winning, like a snowball effect.
In a way, yeah. And to illustrate this, the book uses this really captivating example. These fish called changeling fish.
Changeling fish. Never heard of those.
They're also called cichlids. And get this, they can physically transform from submissive to dominant.
What? Just like that?
Well, when they gain territory.
Hold on, their bodies actually change based on their environment and their social status.
It's pretty wild, right?
That's incredible.
So a change in their situation triggers this whole cascade of hormones.
Yeah.
And leads to physical changes, like brighter colors, a more aggressive look, that kind of thing.
Wow.
And the really fascinating part is this transformation makes them more likely to win future encounters.
So they're literally embodying that winner energy.
Exactly.
Okay, but how does a fish changing color relate to, us?
Well, think about Mike Tyson. His early boxing career.
Okay, yeah.
He fought a lot of weaker opponents in the beginning.
Right. Those were the, what do they call them?
Tomato cans.
Tomato cans, yes.
Exactly. And those early wins, even though they weren't against top-tier fighters,
Yeah.
they likely contributed to his later success through this winner effect.
So even those seemingly insignificant wins early on could have a big impact down the line.
That's the idea. It's like building momentum.
So what's the science behind this winner effect? What's actually happening?
Well, winning, even small victories, triggers the release of testosterone.
Okay.
And testosterone not only boosts your confidence.
Right. Makes you feel good.
Yeah, but it actually rewires your brain too.
Yeah.
Makes you more assertive, more focused, more likely to take risks.
So it's like a positive feedback loop. Each win sets you up for the next one.
Exactly. And the book takes it a step further. It looks at how the winner effect is amplified on what Robertson calls home ground.
Home ground, like a home field advantage.
Exactly that. Studies on California mice showed a much stronger winner effect when they won in their own territory.
Interesting.
And this applies to humans, too. We feel more confident and powerful when we're in familiar surroundings.
So this isn't just about sports. It has implications for, like, negotiating a business deal or even just, navigating a social situation.
Absolutely. The book even gives examples of how this home ground advantage plays out in international diplomacy,
Really?
like the Malta summit between Bush and Gorbachev.
Oh, right.
They chose to meet on ships in neutral waters
Interesting.
to minimize any perceived power imbalance.
So even something as subtle as location can influence the outcome of these high-stakes encounters.
For sure. And it's not just physical location either. The book gets into the surprising influence of, well, something as simple as the color red.
The color red.
Yep. Research has shown that Olympic athletes and soccer teams wearing red actually have a statistically higher chance of winning.
Wait, are you serious?
Oh.
The color red can influence the outcome of a competition?
It might sound crazy, but there's evidence suggesting that red, a color often associated with dominance and aggression, can actually have a subconscious impact on both the wearer and their opponent.
So it's like a psychological power play.
Exactly. It shows how even these subtle cues in our environment can tap into our primal instincts and affect our behavior.
Wow, this is mind-blowing stuff. So we've seen how early wins, even our surroundings, can impact our chances of success. But what happens when we actually DO win? How does power itself change us?
Well, that's where the book takes a really fascinating look at leadership.
Okay.
And it uses the relationship between Bill Clinton and Tony Blair as a lens to examine this.
Ooh, I'm intrigued. Let's dive into that.
The book uses the Kosovo crisis as this, case study,
Okay.
to look at how their past experiences with power shaped how they reacted to this really intense international conflict.
Right.
Clinton, he'd had some setbacks with military interventions before.
Like Somalia, Haiti.
Exactly. So he was a bit more cautious this time around.
Yeah.
Blair, though, he was all about projecting strength,
Interesting.
really pushed for a more aggressive approach.
So they're different experiences with power.
Yeah.
And even the consequences of those experiences,
Right.
really influence their decision-making in this critical moment.
Big time. It just shows how past wins and losses can really impact how leaders see and use power.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's all connected.
The book also talks about this thing called the mum effect. What's that all about?
The mum effect is basically our tendency to, hold back bad news, especially when there's a really hierarchical power structure.
Ah, I see.
Robertson uses the Chernobyl disaster as this, chilling example.
You're right.
With the Soviet Union, so rigid,
Yeah.
information was often suppressed out of fear,
Makes sense.
which tragically delayed a lot of crucial responses and made the disaster even worse.
It's like in a culture where people are afraid to speak truth to power,
Right.
even life-saving information can get buried.
Exactly. And the book contrasts this with Clinton's leadership style, which was much more open.
Right. More open to debate, dissent.
Exactly. It highlights how important it is to have that flow of information. Honest feedback, even criticism, it's essential for good leadership.
It's true. In the Chernobyl example, it seems like the desire to please those in power.
Yeah, or at least not rock the boat.
Exactly. Ended up having devastating consequences.
It's a tough lesson,
Yeah.
but an important one.
Absolutely. So power doesn't just shape how we communicate.
Right.
It can actually distort our perception, too.
That's what the book dives into, yeah.
Distort our perception?
Yeah.
In what way?
So there's this simple experiment where people were asked to draw the letter E on their forehead.
Okay.
The ones who were made to feel powerful, they're more likely to draw it backward, like as if they were looking in a mirror.
Oh, wow.
It suggests that feeling powerful can make us lose perspective. We're less tuned in to how others see us.
It's like power creates this bubble where we assume everyone sees things our way.
Yeah, exactly. And that can cause all sorts of problems.
Yeah.
Miscommunication, lack of empathy, the whole 9 yards.
It's a slippery slope.
It is.
Mm.
And the book connects this back to Tony Blair and some of his later decisions,
Okay.
asking whether that growing sense of power might have clouded his judgment.
It's a good reminder for anyone in a position of authority, really.
For sure.
Mm.
But, the book also explores a more positive outcome linked to winning.
Oh, yeah.
Longevity.
Wait, are you telling me winning can help you live longer?
It does sound kind of counterintuitive.
It does.
But research suggests that Oscar winners and Nobel laureates tend to live longer than other equally accomplished people in their fields.
Wow. That is interesting. What's the thinking on that?
Well, the book delves into this by looking at this is kind of fascinating 19th century Glasgow graveyards.
Graveyards.
Yeah. They used tombstone size as a way to gauge wealth and social status.
Tombstone size. That's an interesting metric.
Right. It's a cool glimpse into the past.
It is.
And they found that basically the taller the tombstone,
Representing more wealth.
right, the longer the person tended to live.
Fascinating. But was it really the wealth itself that made the difference?
That's the question, right? The book points to the chronic stress of having a lower social status as a big factor in shorter lifespans.
So it's not just about having money. It's about the stress that comes with not having it.
Exactly. And to illustrate this, the book looks at baboons. Yeah. Think about the stress a low-ranking baboon feels when it runs into the dominant male.
Oh, okay. I can see that.
That encounter triggers a surge of cortisol, the stress hormone.
Right.
Now, we all know stress is bad for us,
Of course.
but I never really thought about it in terms of social hierarchy before.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it.
So the book argues that being exposed to stress constantly,
Like that low-ranking baboon.
or even just a stressed-out executive,
Right.
it can really damage your body and your brain,
Wow.
especially the parts related to memory and thinking clearly.
So it's not just about feeling stressed in the moment. It's about the physical changes that chronic stress can cause.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the Oscar winners and the Nobel laureates.
Okay.
Could it be that their success gives them some protection from that chronic stress?
Interesting.
A sense of security, control, that lets them live longer, healthier lives.
It's a compelling idea. So the book is saying that feeling in control might be the key to dealing with stress in a healthy way.
That's a big part of it, yeah.
So interesting.
And it raises a broader question about, the nature of the self
Okay.
and how our sense of being an individual,
Right.
or the lack of it, can really affect how we experience stress and power.
I'm all ears. Tell me more.
So the book contrasts Western individualism.
Right. That focus on personal achievement, autonomy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
With a more collectivist view of the self,
Yeah.
like you see in a lot of Eastern cultures.
So how we define ourselves, whether it's as individuals striving for personal gain or as part of a bigger interconnected whole,
Right.
can actually impact how we see the world.
It can. Even brain imaging studies show that the brain represents the self differently across cultures.
Wow.
The Western emphasis on individual achievement can lead to feelings of isolation, competition,
Yeah, I can see that.
while those collectivist cultures often offer a stronger sense of belonging and shared responsibility.
Makes you wonder if there's some kind of balance to be struck, right?
Yeah.
A way to combine that drive for success with a sense of connection.
That's a great question. And to really hammer home the importance of a sense of self, the book talks about this really heartbreaking story. Null Aktien,
No,
a concentration camp prisoner, stripped of his identity, subjected to just unimaginable horrors.
Oh, God.
He eventually lost all sense of self, all will to live.
That's just devastating.
It is. And while his experience is obviously extreme,
Yeah.
it does underscore how damaging social rejection and isolation can be.
Absolutely.
The book even talks about research on HIV-positive gay men,
Okay.
showing that social rejection can weaken their immune systems, make them more susceptible to disease.
So feeling accepted and valued, it's not just about feeling good emotionally.
Right.
It can actually impact our physical health.
Exactly. That need for belonging, for connection, it's deeply rooted in our biology.
Yeah.
And this leads us to the potential dark side of this drive to win,
Okay.
especially when it turns into this unhealthy obsession with power and control.
All right, let's talk about the dark side of winning.
Yeah, the book uses Enron as an example here.
Enron, okay.
A company with that whole culture of winning at all costs
Right.
shows what can happen when that pursuit of success goes off the rails.
Ah, Enron. Classic example of corporate greed gone wrong.
Totally. And what's really interesting is how Robertson connects their downfall to this specific type of power dynamic. He calls it P-power.
P-power. Okay, break that down for me.
P-power stands for personal power.
Got it.
It's all about personal gain, dominance, control,
Yeah.
often fueled by ego, that desire for status.
Mm-mm.
And Enron's leadership, they were like the poster children for this type of power.
Yeah, I can see that.
They created this culture of cutthroat competition, reckless risk-taking, and it ultimately led to their demise.
It's like they were so obsessed with winning, with being the best,
Right.
that they lost sight of everything else, basic ethics,
Totally. And the book gets into how P-power can actually warp your moral compass.
Makes
It talks about research showing that when people feel powerful, they're more likely to break rules, act hypocritically, all that stuff.
It's like power gives them this sense of being above the rules, like they're untouchable.
Exactly. And the book contrasts this with what Robertson calls S-power.
Okay, so P power is personal gain. S power is...
Social power.
Got it.
It's about using your power to empower other people, to make a positive impact on the world. It's about collaboration, empathy, focusing on the greater good.
So it's not just about having power, it's about how you use it.
Nailed it. And the book argues that leaders who show more of that S-power, they tend to build healthier, more sustainable organizations.
Yeah, I can see that.
They foster teamwork, encourage open communication, really prioritize the well-being of their people.
So it's not about giving up on ambition or the desire to succeed.
Right.
It's about channeling those things in a way that benefits everyone, not just yourself.
Perfectly put. And the book challenges us to think about the power dynamics in our own lives, in our workplaces.
Right.
Are we operating from P-power or S-power? Are we using our influence to lift people up or to tear them down?
Those are big questions. And even though we've been talking about leadership,
Yeah,
these concepts apply to all of us. Right?
absolutely. Doesn't matter what your job title is.
Right.
Whether you're leading a team, negotiating a deal, or just interacting with your family and friends.
Yeah.
Understanding power dynamics and how you wield your influence, it's essential for building healthy, meaningful relationships.
I couldn't agree more. So how can we become more aware of our own power dynamics and actually use our influence in a positive way?
Well, the book has a few ideas. One is to do a power audit.
A power audit.
Yeah, it's about taking a hard look at your own behaviors, your motivations. Are you seeking power for personal gain or to benefit others?
Right.
Are you creating a culture of fear or a culture of trust? That kind of thing.
So it's about self-awareness and challenging your own assumptions about power.
Exactly. Another suggestion is to really cultivate that growth mindset.
Right. We talked about that earlier with Paulo Picasso and genetic fatalism.
Yep, exactly. A growth mindset helps you see your potential as something you can develop,
Okay.
not something that's set in stone. And it helps you see power not as this zero-sum game,
Right.
but as a way to empower everyone.
I love that. So it's not about winners and losers. It's about creating a world where everyone has a chance to succeed.
That's the goal. And this brings us to the topic of manipulation.
Manipulation.
Yeah. The book uses a kind of funny example to illustrate this. A pushy vacuum cleaner salesman.
Okay, a vacuum cleaner salesman? I'm listening.
Think about the tactics they use,
Yeah.
right? Talk about all those nasty dust bites, creating a sense of urgency, making you feel like you're getting this amazing deal.
Yeah.
They're playing on your psychology to influence your decision.
Oh, I've definitely fallen for that before.
We all have. And the book explains how these tactics often use this psychological principle called cognitive dissonance.
Cognitive dissonance. Right, that's the discomfort we feel when our beliefs and actions don't line up.
Exactly. So the salesperson creates the situation where it feels worse to say no than to say yes.
Even if you don't really need a new vacuum.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And while this might seem like a pretty harmless example,
Right.
the book connects this to more serious stuff like bullying and harassment.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It explains how bullies can use cognitive dissonance to manipulate people into going along with harmful behavior.
So you're saying that our desire to avoid feeling uncomfortable
Yeah, or inconsistent.
can actually lead us to make choices that go against our values.
It can.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder of how easily we can be manipulated, especially when we're not aware of what's happening.
Wow. This has been a really insightful deep dive. We've covered so much ground. The science of winning, the complexities of power, the dangers of manipulation.
There's a lot to unpack. But I think the main takeaway is that winning is complicated.
Right.
It's influenced by so many things, our biology, our environment, the choices we make. It's not just about reaching a specific goal.
Yeah.
It's about how we define success and how we use our influence to make a positive difference.
I love that. It's a great message. And it leaves me with a final question for our listeners.
Okay.
What does winning mean to you? And how can you use your own winner effect to make a difference in the world?
That's a powerful question.
Yeah.
I'd also add, how can we create a world where winning isn't about beating someone else, but about working together to build a better future for everyone?
That's something to think about for sure. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the winner effect. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep striving to win in a way that makes the world a better place.